Hey there, hi there, ho there, Dice Camera Action fans. This is your friend Sage of Sorcery, and welcome to episode 7 of the Waffle Press. Boom. Okay, we have so much stuff to talk about today. I've been off the grid for a little while in terms of the show and in terms of my show because, for the noblest of reasons, I've been playing D&D. So that and tending to family things and work things have just been a little bit crazy. I didn't have a ton to say maybe about episode 90, although I'm going to be talking about it quite a bit today. I'm going to talk about episode 91. So today we're going to cover episodes 91 to 93. I have a lot to talk about, particularly after the explosive argument between Paultin and Evelyn. And in fact, I was just listening to it right before I logged on here to do my show because it was so impactful. And I wanted to, right before I got on, since we're going to be talking about it, I wanted to have that sense of what I felt like in the moment as I was listening to the show, because I actually didn't listen live to episode 93. I think I didn't listen live to episode 92 either, but when I was listening to episode 93, I was like, yeah. So it was quite the adjustment, and it was quite dramatic. Anyway, so lots to talk about here. So I'm gonna rewind a little bit backwards before we jump into the main event here. This episode might go a little bit longer. I don't know. Do not be alarmed if you hear any strangeness. My kids are all in different areas of the house doing kid things. My daughter has a friend over for some late night party, so they're downstairs, and you may hear giggling teenage girls at some point. You may also hear some of their loud movies. I think they may even be climbing up the stairs to listen to me while I'm filming, which, whatever, I don't care. This is pretty PG-13. So anyway, just be prepared for a slight interference. Of course, if anybody is listening live, I don't get too many live listeners, which is fine. Most of you check in on YouTube, which is cool. But if I get any live questions, I'm looking at chat. I'm looking at the stream chat. So feel free to leap in. Magikarp or Adam E.T. or anybody else who watches regularly, feel free to jump in and ask me a question, and I will answer because I'm looking at it all, simultaneously. So to back up first, I want to talk about the introduction to the episode. I love the new animated intro. Do you guys love the new animated intro? Because I just love it. I love it for two reasons. Okay, so first, and I think I already said this on Twitter, but I absolutely loved the intro because of the musical theme, number one. It reminds me of Wonder Woman. I grew up watching the Linda Carter Wonder Woman series, and I watched it, I used to watch it with my sister, who was kind of a fan at that time, and, there were other bouncy reasons why a younger boy might have wanted to watch that show, but Wonder Woman is actually my favorite superhero, so I loved that. Big fan of Greek mythology. And it also is combined with a kind of a Mission Impossible secret agent sound to it. So I loved that too. So I love the theme. And then the cartoon itself, it's fantastic. I love how they have kind of forecast who the Waffle Crew are going to be running into. I think it's fantastic. So I think and I've read some of the talk on the subreddit, there's been a lot of discussion about who those figures are. So this is going to be something that I think is particularly interesting as we find out who they are. That being said, I'm not sure we're going to find out who they are because, as Chris says, he writes out a summary for all 30 episodes and then he throws them all away because of the decisions that the Waffle Crew made. In fact, he told us the Boom Boom episode, and if you don't want spoilers, this is the wrong show because we're going to be talking about him. He had a completely different plan when these storm giants busted out of the ocean, and the counterspell changed his plan. So we know Chris makes plans, but then he has to discard them as the players make choices. And that's what a good dungeon master does. If the players aren't having the biggest impact on the story, you're railroading them. And, and if that's your style of play, that's okay. Some players maybe don't want to have the narrative in their hand as much. Some of them maybe aren't as comfortable doing that. I don't think Nate was that comfortable or any near that where that comfortable beginning. So I don't know. It'll be interesting though to see what changes, to see how they move forward. But I absolutely loved it. A couple things I wanted to point out from the intro. The first one is the flying snake. That was Danny Hartel's NPC, who, if you look in the manual, spoilers, if you look in the Tomb of Annihilation book, is actually someone who's hunting the Ring of Winter for herself. She may claim to have noble motives or altruistic motives, but that character was secretly out for the Ring of Winter unless Chris or Danny Hartel changed the character. So even though she was telling the party one thing, ooh, we got to get the ring away from artists because, I love the god. Who knows, what they were saying, what she was saying. That flying snake was kind of her familiar. So if that was her familiar, and we see a flying snake again, and somebody grabs it, it begs the question: why is the flying snake back, and who is the flying snake allied with? So I was curious about that. I don't know, and I know the thing is they've crossed the Yuan-ti. There's that whole part of the jungles of Chult where they are running into snakes here and there and transforming and Yuan-ti and blah 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 and Rasnizi or whatever, and so they've crossed the Yuan-ti. So that flying snake could be nothing more than the Yuan-ti. But I think it kind of more pointed towards Danny Hartel's NPC. So I don't know. The other thing is, I think we saw Strahd. I could be wrong, but that was Strahd, the slick back but longer hairdo. I didn't get the sense that was a woman, and it looked like maybe a robe, but it could have been a cape also. So I don't know, maybe that's Strahd. I do think that's coming up. I think if it doesn't come up at some point, I think it'll be a mistake. I don't think that you can have Strahd ignoring the offense that they've given him. He's a vile, evil creature, and he hates, and he holds grudges. Like the undead hold legendary grudges of legendary length. So, I don't know. It should be interesting. I read that there was some question about who the rogue, the swashbuckler was with the sword. I don't think it's Jarlaxle. Jarlaxle would be interesting, and I also hope it's not Jarlaxle. Jarlaxle would be interesting. He is a terribly interesting character, but he's not Chris's character. He belongs to R.A. Salvatore in the same way that Drizzt Do'Urden belongs to R.A. Salvatore. For those of you who don't know, Chris Perkins, in one of the Acquisitions Incorporated games, he played Drizzt Do'Urden, and he joined the party. And I didn't think it worked. I'm not sure why he did it. I'm pretty sure Drizzt belongs to Wizards of the Coast. And he's going to have another series of novels coming out. So for those of you who are Drizzt fans, I think Timeless is what I think it's called. It's the story of Jarlaxle and Zaknafein, Drizzt's father. But I thought it was lame. I didn't think it worked. I mean, Drizzt, you can't just drop Drizzt in the middle of a party of companions. He's a leader. And even if he doesn't want a leadership role, his principles cause him to take a leadership role. So anyway, I didn't like it. I didn't like Chris playing him. I don't think Chris played him well. I know we're not supposed to say anything negative to Chris, but I broke that rule lately. Anyway, so that being said, I don't know. I hope it's not Jarlaxle for that reason. I hope it's somebody else that we just don't know, like one of those assassins from the inn, maybe, who's got a hat and a rapier. Now, I don't know. It could be any number of people. I know there are lots of ideas on the subreddit. I'm excited to find out who they are. Pretty sure one of them is the Dragon Clouth. I think that's fairly predictable. And then we have the two nobles, and we assume that they're nobles because they're walking through piles of coins and kicking up gold, which I think is interesting. Now, I'll tell you who I hope those two nobles are. I don't think that there's much likelihood that it is who I think it might be, but if it was, I would really enjoy it. Chris, in his series of articles called The Dungeon Master Experience, where he wrote for Dragon Magazine about what his rules for good dungeon mastering were, or some stylistic choices or some strategies that he used, he talked about he called it was April 7th, 2011. The article was called The Dastardly Duo. And he talks about two of his villains, and they're named Carl Mistram and Nemencia Xandros. He talks about them, and I'll read a little bit. He says, Carl and Nemencia have three qualities that make them stand out. First, like all truly evil villains, they believe that their actions are justified. Second, they're incredibly lucky. And third, like two sides of a coin, they can't really exist without each other. And he compares them to Spike and Drusilla from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So there's that. And then he kind of talks a little bit about them more in detail. He said they stolen their parents' fortune to spend on a massive elemental citadel held aloft by a 1,000-foot high cyclone of water. And then once Karl and Nemesia, have obtained the citadel, they plan to wipe out the Imperial fleet of Eo Kalioth and run roughshod over the island city. He says it might seem crazy in your campaign, but it fits perfectly into mine. He said it's very easy to hate a pair of spoiled rich kids who want to trade their silver spoons for platinum and blow obscene amounts of money because they feel trodden upon. I would love it. These are from Chris's homeworld of Eomandra, but I would love it if they planescaped their way into the campaign and we got some homemade Chris Perkins enemies. I think that'd be awesome. I think that'd be so fun. So I would love it if it were them. Otherwise, I have no idea who the two of them are. The Forgotten Realms does not lack for criminal organizations with nobles. They could be Knights of the Shield. They could be members of the Zentarum. They could be, evil priests. I mean, they could be anybody. The fire knives. The lightning knives, the chicken knives, whatever. They could be, any number. The Shadow Thieves. They could be any number of different organizations in the Forgotten Realms and belong to them. But the idea that nobles want them, that's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see that play out. So, love the intro. Wanted to talk about that. Now I'm going to tell you, let's jump into my segment, What Works and What Irks, for the last 3 episodes. It's a lot to talk about. Those of you who don't enjoy my lore segments as much, you'll probably like this episode a little bit more, because we are going to talk so much plot, because I've got 3 episodes to talk about and bring up. So we're going to talk so much plot today, you may enjoy this. What Works and What Irks. Going back to the previous episodes, 91, I love Omen Drawn laying the verbal smackdown on Diath and the other party. Jerry Holkins is so funny. So I really thought that his banter with the party works. It was fun watching him interact with the party because Acquisitions Incorporated kind of this high fantasy adventure where Viari breaks, rules and rolls a 10 and manages to flip through 3 portcullises and a dragon's anus or whatever. Anyway, it's very impressive, and that's pretty great. So that being said, anyway, I just think it's cool. So moving on, the other thing that I thought was really cool was when he says to Paultin, Paultin's kind of insisting on being there for the resurrection, and he says, I don't know what you do, but I don't come down to wherever it is you do your thing and give pithy observations. That was hilarious. Because first of all, he's so condescending because he talks about coming down, which I thought was hilarious. And then pithy. Pithy means concise and forcefully expressive. So, he's like, I don't come down and give these, forcefully expressive or concise observations and tell you how to do your resurrection, business. Like, don't tell me how to resurrect. So, anyway, I love Omen. And Jerry plays him so well. So I like that. I tell you, speaking of dialogue, speaking of things, I love Jared Knabenbauer. I've said many times I think that Diath needs more love, and I feel that way. But the Waffle Press is also a little bit more about being honest, and I have to be honest with you about something that irks. Diath's dialogue. Jared's got to start writing it down ahead of time, because what is tumbling out is awkward. It's meant to be impassioned. It's meant to be serious. It's meant to be, impactful. But what tumbles out is kind of just like gobbledygook that doesn't make sense, shoved with fancy words in it. Now, I love you, Knobenator. Please don't take it personally. I can't control it if you do. But the whole response to Omen, he said, my opinion of you has only of the gentlest bettering. What? I was like, fancy word, big vocabulary word. Write it down ahead of time. You're going to have a conflict with Omen. There were times when I did like one thing that he said when Evelyn died. He said, too bad for it. It couldn't handle Evelyn. That's great. I mean, I liked that. So that tumbled out well. Maybe, I don't know if he prepped it, but I think if you want your character to come off a certain way, prepping their dialogue ahead of time is a really good idea, particularly if you're the dungeon master. I do prepare, and I know Chris does this also, because you have soliloquies and monologues in the Dungeon Master's, not the Dungeon Master's Guide, in the adventure books that you get. You do have, monologues, things like Strahd's speech. If you want a villain or a character to come off in a particular way, you need to write some of their dialogue ahead of time. Right now, unfortunately, I feel like Diath's dialogue is making him come off like an idiot or like a goober. And you can't keep up with Omen, particularly because Jerry Holkins can think on his feet. You're always going to look like the moron if you don't have some more witty banter prepared. So that's my advice, my cheap advice. That's my opinion. Fillet me if you so choose, but this is the Waffle Press. Okay. Anyway, so something that I think is really working, moving on to something that works, is Evelyn's enjoyment of her senses. I feel like Anna is really, really playing that up well. She's making sure to talk about how Evelyn's enjoying her senses. I want a bath, and she talks about Strix's smell and the cake being on her and be like, and that's kind of funny. The sea air, the ocean, Evelyn's enjoying her having a physical body back. I think Anna's doing a good job playing with that. Other things that I thought that worked previously, jumping back in the resurrection, I thought it really worked that Chris just let her be resurrected. I do have to tell you, though, it is not what I was expecting at all. I was sure that somebody was going to attack. I was absolutely sure it was going to happen for a couple of reasons. To begin with, now that Shar the goddess of the night, seems to have taken an interest in the opposing side, now that Evelyn has slain a demigod, or a demigod in the making, and channeled so much of Lathander's power, it seems to me like they would want to stop her. I mean, there are rumblings. I've heard whispers of sainthood. I still think Evelyn's chosen. If she's not chosen, I think that's stupid. I think she should be chosen at this point. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But you look at Faerun, the continent of the Forgotten Realms, and the Forgotten Realms in general. One of the defining features of the Forgotten Realms is the involvement of the gods. Obviously, that's why I know so much about it. I talk about it frequently because we're in the Forgotten Realms, and I know so much about it. That's one of my Sage of Sorcery sageisms, right? So in the Planescape setting, it's all the powers. In the Planescape setting, it's demon lords and archfiends and devils and archfey and gods, although less so because the Lady of Pain won't tolerate them. It's also Dark Lords of the Shadowfell. Now we have Primordials and Genie Lords, like the Ifrit, the Sultan of Brass and all these things. They're all power players in Sigil, not Sigil, sorry. They're all power players in Sigil. And so that being the case, that kind of gives a different flavor. But the powers, the gods themselves, are the ones who are influential in the Forgotten Realms. And that's just one of the defining features of the campaign setting. So, I'm really surprised Chris had no one, but, I'm surprised that he did it. I don't think it's realistic, but I do like it, and I think it works. Because the Waffle Crew has had too much tragedy. I think they've had enough, right? You've got all these horrible things, all these deaths happening. Then we have these emotional, heart-ripping episodes. I teared up. Most of the time I'm just going I'm laughing or I'm enjoying it, dice camera action. But we've been through the emotional ringer. Chris was right when he's like, "Welcome to Dice Camera Action, a show where people cry." We do. So anyway, it's interesting, but it's one of the reasons also why we love the show. If it can get us to laugh and it can get us to cry, that's good art. That's good theater, right? And obviously, we're invested in the characters at this point. Other things that I think work. I love that Chris keeps bringing up Waffle's eating and wreaking havoc. They never remember to feed that effing owl bear. Okay? That thing is a behemoth. I'm sure it's like one of those bear it has to eat its weight in food, But suboptimal. They never remember to feed it. It's fun. It's so fun to watch Chris remember, and then Waffles is like eating someone's, kitchen dries in the pantry with a sausage, taking down their cake, all of the above. So anyway, it's interesting. I like it, and there you go. But I think it works. So anyway, I'm glad that they brought Evelyn back. Other things that I thought really worked. I love watching Simon shoot Omen Drawn. That's number one, it's very Simon. Number two, it was hilarious, And, Omen's going to survive because he has this, heinous constitution. And he's a cleric. And there's healing. And, Omen's powerful magic, And Evelyn had been, resurrected, and so anyway, I loved it. So he opens his mouth and shoots shoots Omen Drawn. It was hilarious, and Evelyn's like, "No, bad boy, not good." Like, it's so Simon. I will be honest, I didn't really want Simon resurrected. I know Simon's kind of an important figure to Paultin, or at least he was, but I don't think Paultin needs Simon anymore. And so I feel like Simon is just kind of an irritant. They barely remember that Simon is there, and they're not really interested in him anymore, to be honest with you. I think he's outlived his interestingness. So I don't know. Who knows? They went to the trouble to have him resurrected and to get a gem, and so obviously they're invested. But I almost feel like that's out of character obligation. They're trying to play their characters accurately. They don't ever seem to remember him. They don't give him instructions in a fight. And Chris is just constantly describing what he does. Otherwise, I think they'd forget about him entirely. So anyway, I don't know. Those are my feelings on Simon. I'm glad. I think it works. He did not come back with his mouth. Chris played it well, and if you have watched my previous streams on the episodes where Simon gets his mouth and tells his dad jokes and all that, I voiced my opinions on that. You can go back and watch that previously if you want to. But I thought it was really annoying. As accurate as it was, as excellently as Chris prepared and played for it, I didn't like it. I'm like, we don't need to, there are enough mouths at the table already with important things to say. I don't want to hear from Simon. I don't want Waffles to get a mouth. I don't want psychic contact with Waffles to know what Waffles is thinking. What Waffles is thinking, one thing: kill, food, snuggle. That's and not necessarily in that order, although probably in that order, right? So anyway, I thought that worked. Anyway, other things that I think are working, and this I mean across all 3 of the episodes and the previous one also, there is some serious character evolution going on. The Waffle Crew is changing, and I like it. In any campaign where you have a long campaign, I've played some, and I'm dungeon mastering some that I've been playing for years. I have some that I'm on hiatus on that I might go back to with my buddies that I play with, that I might, I don't know, I might play that campaign every, year, once a year maybe. So there's some campaigns I've been playing for 5 years, maybe, 7 years, who knows. But anyway, just gives you an idea of what you can do. But I really like the evolution. So to begin with, we've got Evelyn adjusting to the idea of the afterlife of it being okay for her to want things. I like that. I like that idea. It's immature and it's spiritually shallow to not begin to develop your idea of what is acceptable offering and sacrifice to God and what is outside of the boundaries of appropriateness. Now, this is just my spiritual belief, so don't, please don't take this as me proselyting at you, because that's not what my show is about. But I do think that all religious people, and I do talk about this quite a bit, right? I talk about faith. I do think that all spiritual and religious people get to this point where they have to negotiate all the parts of balance. People criticized Jesus when he healed on the Sabbath, and they said, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? What an idiotic thing to say to a prophet, or the Son of God, if they didn't know he was that. He's healing a man with his power, right? With his priesthood, and they criticize him, and he's like, if your ass fell in a pit on the Sabbath, would you leave it there to die or pull it out, idiot? So, Jesus didn't say idiot. That's my extrapolation. Sorry, not to disparage the master. But anyway, so I feel like that's something that Evelyn has to develop also. That healthy balance. What is the healthy balance between helping and leaping into the fray and being foolhardy? And Paultin brings that up, and we're going to talk about that. Okay, we'll get into that. I like that evolution for Evelyn. I like the evolution of her not leaping in carelessly. We could bring up the David and Goliath thing. The idea of leaping in to confront evil is part of being a paladin or a disciple of Christ, whatever you want to call it, right? So I think that's necessary, because think of the story, and it's really about the David and Goliath scenario. The idea that it does not matter what evil stands before you. If God stands with you, who can stand against you? Now, in this case, in the story, it's Lathander, right? And unfortunately, this is a game, so I don't think that the same rules apply if you get a fireball to the face. But anyway, that being said, the personality and playing that religious person character trait is necessary if you're going to have someone who really appears to be strong in their faith. Particularly a paladin of Lathander who goes to the forefront. But finding that balance, I think, is a great area of growth for Evelyn, and I like it. Paultin coming to the realization that, hey, I really do value my family, and they mean a lot to me, and I really care about taking care of them. And also Paultin stepping to the forefront to have a more active role in what's going on. I think that's fantastic. And even Strix forming an association with Omen Drawn and reaching out for help. Strix is becoming more of a problem solver and less of a fall down on the floor and cry. She may do that still, but Strix acts now. She does. She's not as passive, and she's growing up, I feel like, in that way. I don't know that I see Diath evolving as much. He kind of evolved. I think he devolved into a puddle of goo. Like rocking back and forth and doing the precious, thing on the boat, realizing what he had done. But, then again, Diath is probably the most moral member of the party. Maybe he doesn't need to evolve as much as the others do. Either way, with Paultin stepping up into more of a leadership role and Strix being a little bit more independent, it begs the question, where does Diath go? What do we do with Diath? And where does he go from here? And how does this play out? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where Jared takes him. Once again, prep that dialogue, JT. So anyway, whatever. Or JK, my bad. Not JK joke, Jared Konami. But anyway, moving on. So I really feel like the character evolution is working. I feel like that is at the heart of why the Dragon Turtle incident happened. They don't rely on Diath anymore to go straight to the front. Evelyn flew out there, and Paultin threw the mandolin down first, and then Paultin came out when the dragon started talking. He wasn't content. Hi there, Swan Dive. No, you did not miss my come to Jesus talk about the shipping. We're going to get into that. I was just talking about the evolution of the Dice Camera action characters, and I was just talking about the fact that I like to see them all evolving, and I think that's why the incident with the Dragon Turtle happened. Normally, they would send Diath to the front, but now we've got Strix being more problem-solving, being more assertive. We've got Paultin caring about his family and taking a more active role rather than just being drunk in the corner all the time. And, you have Evelyn stepping out to the front also. And also Evelyn stepping back now because of what Paultin said to her. But I think that there was that huge indecision, not necessarily just because they're suboptimal and they're chaotic, but there's a fluctuation going on right now in the party in terms of leadership role. So I'm interested in that. I think it works. I like it. The characters need to develop for it to be interesting. So that's something that I like. The bomb, I thought, was an act of desperation. That they offended the dragon. And it was stupid Evelyn who defended the dragon. Evelyn being Evelyn, he's like, I don't like music. Well, why don't you like it? Girl, you don't ask no dragon why you don't like music. What are you doing? So I thought that was pretty dumb. It's a dragon. Dragons are all about pride and whatnot. Okay, so looking at Swan Dive says Diath's got too much blood on his hands now. He's likely going to take a step back at this point, I think. Yeah, Swan Dive, I agree with you 100%. I think Diath was catatonic almost, and he, begging Evelyn not to go. I don't know, poor Jared. I don't know that there was a ton of sympathy for Diath because of the major ship conflict that was going on. And then there's poor Strix in the background who is like, trying to, everybody just be okay. Everyone just be okay. She reminds me of the little kid who wants their parents to stop fighting. But I've often said that Strix is childlike. And so I really do feel like Strix is Holly's playing Strix true to character. I like that. But anyway, I think it works. I like it. I like things being shaken up. Now I have to talk about something that irks. Evelyn did cause the catastrophe. She did. She caused the Dragon Turtle to attack by trying to have banter with it and throw music at it. We already know what his acceptable offering is. If music had worked before, I'm pretty sure someone would have heard about it. But what irked me, and I was not nice in chat. So sorry, Anna. I was probably a little bit too sassy, and I'm the one who feels like being open and honest is something that needs to be more acceptable in our community, less about tiptoeing around people's feelings. But I probably went too far in the chat. When she went to give up the holy symbol of Ravenkind, I thought that was a colossal act of stupidity in character, and possibly metagaming stupidity also. Because for a number of reasons. For one, they have lost the Strahd doll. Strahd is going to come back. Maybe he won't come back this season, but no self-respecting dungeon master is going to let a vampire lord of the Shadowfell just let that slight go by. Strahd will come back, okay? And they can't confront him. They are not powerful enough to take Strahd down. And the only place they're going to take him down, likely, is in his domain. In his domain, Strahd is almost like a power, right? He's almost like a god. But the deal is, I don't think he'll lure the party there. The Mists, he'll find a way to bring them to Ravenloft. But they have to have the holy symbol of Ravenkind and the Sun Sword to confront him. Strahd is too powerful, especially on his home turf. They don't have the power to confront him. The holy symbol of Ravenkind is the equalizer. If you've read Vampire the Mists, and if you haven't, pause, stop, walk away, whatever. But Jander Sunstar, the elven vampire, wields the holy symbol of Ravenkind against Strahd and almost kills him. It is the great equalizer. So anyway, I thought and also, it's a holy relic. Evelyn, the paladin of Lathander, who, rumblings of sainthood, is going to throw away a holy relic, a gift from the gods, to fight undead evil. And she's going to give it away to a dragon of all creatures? I was like, no. Anyway, so that irked me. I was like, it doesn't work for Evelyn. It doesn't work in character. It doesn't work on a number of levels. So I don't like that. I thought it was foolish. However, suboptimal, right? Suboptimal. So there's that. Okay. Moving on to other things that we have to talk about. So we're a half an hour into the show, and now it is time to talk about something else that irks, and that is the state of Evilton. So Swandive says, I was unapologetically team throw the bomb. So was I, dude. I think having that big bomb, I think we're all going like, oh, when are they going to throw the bomb? I want them to use it. Plus, you see them come up against these horrible evils that are too great for them to contain. And I'm not saying the dragon was evil, but it wasn't nice, demanding tribute for keeping pirates away. It was certainly not a lawful good gold dragon. But I wanted them to throw the bomb at it. But of course, Chris is going to take that and run with it all the way into a tidal wave across the ocean. But anyway, moving on to other things that irk. The state of Evilton. This is my contention. Feel free to agree with me. I am not threatened by opposing viewpoints. I think Evelyn needs to move on. And I think if she doesn't move on, I think she is at risk of corrupting her character's integrity and her strength as a woman. And I feel that very strongly for a number of reasons. So, yes, Wanda. Chris wanted to throw the bomb too, I think. I mean, he literally put Stralton on the boat to pull that key to pressure him. Oh, yeah. Chris, I think Chris wanted to do it too. We're going to talk more about the bomb at the end when I get into Down the Rabbit Hole, because I'm going to tell you where I think that's going. Anyway, so like I was saying about Evilton, everybody is shipping them so hard for a number of reasons. Number one, because we all want to see Evelyn's affection returned. We want to see the love that her character feels honored, right? Love unrequited only goes for so long before it begins to be unhealthy, right? So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But we're all shipping so hard. Chris is shipping. So look at Chris's narrative. When Evelyn gets resurrected, Chris says to Paultin, Evelyn comes out into the hallway, and he said, the two of you lock eyes. So Chris is like, here's your moment. Here's your moment, Nate. Are you going to do it? Are you going to do it? Are you going to do it? And this is Jared, like, okay. And Holly's in the background, like, And we're all wondering, are we going to get our moment, right? Is it going to happen? So Chris is shipping it hard. Also, Jared pushes Evelyn out into the hallway to go talk to him. Evelyn, just go talk to him. Just go talk to him. Go have your aside. Go have your moment. And I'm just like, Jared is shipping. Anyway, the chat went wild. Adam and I and a bunch of other people were typing in the lyrics to Kiss the Girls from The Little Mermaid. I'll tell you what I wanted. Have you guys seen Breaking Dawn? Have you ever seen Breaking Dawn when Bella wakes up as a vampire and Bella wakes up and there's this really beautiful song playing? And then she locks eyes and she sees Edward. He's like one of the first things that she sees. That was... And then you look up and Bella, this beautiful music is playing, and Bella kisses her husband. And it's this beautiful reunion when she almost died, right? And that is what I think I wanted. I wanted Paultin to lean over. We all wanted it. We're shipping so hard. We all wanted it to happen. But anyway, that's what I wanted. And everything was there. Nate continuously throws these moments aside. Anyway, and I think if Evelyn continues to lay herself bare in front of Paultin, she's on the verge of turning Evelyn into a victim. And she's also ignoring what's right necessarily for him. Ignoring the right thing in favor of him. Like when she says sorry about the mandolin and she doesn't leave, and there's this dead coast and she's, instead of these people, she's worrying about Paultin being upset about the mandolin. I'm like, that's neutral good or not, not lawful good. She's neutral good. I have a problem there. So anyway, I think it's unhealthy. Evelyn keeps dropping these enormous openings where she's begging for affection, begging to have her affection returned in some way, right? Like she says, you probably wanted Simon back, not me. Right? And what does he doesn't say anything. He's like, no, whatever, right? Do you want me there when Simon's resurrected? Like, are we really a family, right? And then she clings to his chest, right, when he finally gives her the bro hug. And she's like, oh, your chest is so soft. I can feel your heartbeat. It's nice. I'm like, okay. So my problem is she keeps laying these moments in front of Nate, in front of Paultin. And every time she gets a pat on the head and she gets friendship, right? Clearly, he's not that into you. Have you read that book? Okay. Or do you remember when that book came out? Okay, so Swan Dive, a couple more things here, and then I'm going to read what you wrote here. He also gets, good to have you back. We've got things to do. Let's go. Dude, what the heck? You can't take a moment to show her some affection? And then we're going to get into the fight in a little bit. But I will also throw this out. I do feel like Paultin keeps reeling her back in. Now, I don't know if you are familiar with abusive relationships, but when the abuser who has the power in the relationship feels like the person that they have power over is withdrawing, they throw out just enough affection to reel him back in, right? And that is what I feel like Paultin is doing to Evelyn. He keeps her signet ring. He wants her, he's the only one in the room when she awakens, knowing what that's going to mean to her, when he tells her, I dreamed that you were back. And what does that do to a girl? You dreamed about me? All is forgiven, So I feel like we are at a point now where she is turning herself into a victim. And she is, she needs to stand up and insist on being treated with affection. And I think that's where the old saying of playing hard to get comes from, right? Time to play hard to get for Evelyn Anna. Evelyn's a role model. She matters, although play your character, do whatever you want, right? Okay, so Swan Dive says, all right, here's my take. I think that it's going to happen eventually. It might, but Paultin is going to have to make the change, not Evelyn. Nate said not to rush things. I remember that. He said, shh, chat, you can't rush these things, hinting that it will eventually happen. See, but that's what I'm talking about. Him throwing those hints out. I think something's going to happen with Paultin, and he's going to have a come-to-the-fender moment about it. He might. I don't know. Maybe a romantic rival in Evelyn's life would do that. Maybe if Diath... Well, there's something for you, Jared. I mean, maybe if Diath comes along and begins to express an interest in Evelyn, I mean, they're clearly more suited to one another in terms of their morality, right? Paultin is still discovering his morality, which is another issue that stands between them, which maybe makes them not the best couple. Although opposites do attract, and sometimes people with different personality traits and characteristics can help each other to balance out and grow. My wife and I have that kind of relationship. I am the bombastic, loud, very expressive one who some people say I frequently put my foot in my mouth. I'm sure some of you think that, which is fine. And my wife is the calmer one who's more mellow. Everybody loves her. She doesn't challenge anybody. And between the two of us, it's kind of become more healthy. Yes, Wanda, you're right. There's plenty of fish in the sea for Evie, Please no Drist. Blech. Gag me with a spoon, fork, and a scimitar. Please no. But with Diath, maybe that would work. And then if Paultin doesn't show any interest after that, clearly he wasn't interested in the first place. Now, I said before previously, it might be because Nate is engaged now and he feels like it's inappropriate. There's that, people have been joking about Mike Pence, our vice president, because, there's so much anger and hatred towards the administration right now. And some of it rightfully justified, right? So that being said, Mike Pence talked about how he's never out to lunch with a woman alone. And I do the same thing. I would never spend time with another woman, just us alone elsewhere. I'm married, right? So, I don't know. Maybe if Evelyn did that, maybe if she spent some time alone with Diath, maybe Paultin would get irked. Anyway, so speaking of, let's talk about that heinous fight between the two of them. Now, I will also throw out here, I know this has been a pretty critical episode for me, but I will also throw out here, I heard some real player anger in their voices. It's difficult because when you're acting, and anyone who has ever been in a play or acted before knows that sometimes the way that you become realistic as an actor is to invest real emotion, right? But I heard real player angst coming out when they said some of the things. When Paulton's throwing out these trigger words like stupid and self-righteous and anyway, you need to figure out what your definition of right and wrong is and stick with it. I was like, oh, sure. Anyway, it was getting ugly. And then Anna's face, I don't know if you watched her, but she was like, oh. And then when Anna responded, when she was like, I need to figure out my definition of right. Why are you even here to begin with? I was like, oh, it just got real. You could cut the tension in the room with a knife. So, honestly, that whole exchange between the two of them was not only necessary, but it was. I fly on the wall. It was popcorn. It was great cinema. But the tension between them was real. Now, I will say, it was nice to see Evelyn get angry at Paultin, and to let him kind of have it. She's like, I have a problem with my sense of right and wrong. If you'd climb out of the bottle long enough, maybe you'd... Anyway, so it was, it was so tense in that room. But I will say this. Paultin came down on her hard. I don't think he has any right to talk to her that way. But what he said, there is a big seed of truth in it. She does throw herself headlong into danger all the time without thinking anything but this is what Lathander wants me to do, stand against evil. Well, when you become part of a family, especially when you become a parent, and I would know, you heard my little rugrat running back and forth, I think, it's not about you anymore. It's not about what works for you. You become part of a unit, and you have to be considerate of other people. Most marriages break up because of one reason, and it really boils down to selfishness and being considerate. People make selfish choices. They trample the feelings of their partner, and they destroy trust. And that's what breaks up most marriages. And yes, there's money, and yes, there are a lot of other things that go into it. But ultimately, what it boils down to is, do you respect the person enough to be considerate of them, to take them into consideration when you make choices? And so Paultin has a point, Evelyn is not thinking about her family. She claims to love them, but Lathander's her first love. So it is a difficult road to walk. I like that. Now, Swan Dive said, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a swap and Diath and Evie got together. I think so too. I don't see a future with Strix. I've said that many times. Her hygiene prevents that from being an issue for me. And I know other people have said that doesn't get in the way. I'm sorry, but I think realistically it does. Diath is not a dirty boy. And maybe he's used to Strix and her smell. But there's also the fact that Strix is a child. When she was talking about pregnancy, Holly said, well, has anyone explained to Strix where babies come from? She really is that ignorant about relationships. And she grew up in the hive. And, she doesn't really have deep understanding. She's not ready for a relationship at all, I think. No matter how she might love Diath, I still view it as more of a brother and sister relationship. She's not emotionally, I think, mature enough to have that. I don't know that Dice Camera Action has enough seasons in it for her to develop that emotional maturity. So anyway, no. So you know what? Maybe I am shipping Diath and Evelyn. I don't know. But I don't know. You always want the long odds relationship to work out. You want people to have their fairy tale and their happy ending. Now, I'm going to throw one more comment out on this, and that is I feel like Evelyn handled it the right way in order to keep the party together. So well done, Anna. Good playing. Really, and well done, all of them. Good acting in these last 3 episodes. Lot of, boy, Nate has sure grown as a role player. Really good acting from all of them. It's nice to see Nate take the forefront when so much of the focus has been on Strix. She's the most popular character in Dice Camera Action still. She shows up in that video game that now they're in, and then Evelyn is now probably the next most popular. Evelyn has shown up now in that video game next. I don't remember. Swan Dive, do you remember I don't remember what that video game is called. I could look it up really quickly, but anyway, so Evelyn is that popular. It's nice to see that. I do want to see Diath take more of a leadership role, Lorcatha time maybe, I don't know. But I will say Evelyn handled it the right way. Now, it reminded me of something. If you've read The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, really, really, really famous fantasy book series. In The Wheel of Time, there is basically a messiah figure, okay? He's called the Dragon Reborn. And he has, in the very beginning of the first book, he had Idle Champions. Thanks, Swan Dive. Yeah. So we got Evelyn and Strix in Idle Champions. Obviously, Evelyn's in it next. She's the next most popular. I think I would expect to see Paultin next, and with some kind of beer attack. I don't know that I would see Diath next. I'm not sure there's enough love for Diath, but I love Diath, Jared, so don't let that. Anyway, that being said, this Wheel of Time book, the Dragon Reborn is a messiah figure, and he initially trusts this kind of magic user. Her name is Moraine, and he initially trusts her. But then the other magic users in her order they kidnap him, they attempt to manipulate him, they attempt to force his destiny as a messiah figure, and he loses all trust for them. And then Moraine, but he needs their guidance. I mean, ultimately, these women in this order called the Aes Sedai, they have been prepping for centuries to guide the Dragon Reborn to fulfilling his destiny. But he doesn't trust the Aes Sedai anymore. He doesn't trust their order. So how does Moraine handle it? She doesn't kidnap him like the other ones in her order did. She yields to him. And she says that she suddenly remembered how you access your power. You yield yourself to Sadar. You don't, which is the female source of magic. You don't snatch the female source of magic. You yield to it and it comes to you. And I feel like that was what she did successfully with Paultin. She yielded. And I will say that is usually the best method for resolving argument and disagreement between people. No one is going to forgive, and no conflict will be resolved unless someone yields. It does not mean you have to allow yourself to be abused or disrespected, but someone has to yield. Someone has to take the first step, even if it's a small step, so that the other person then feels safe taking a step into admitting what they did wrong, right? Sorry, this has become Dice Camera Action and psychology, but a lot of life experience here. So anyway, that being said, I think she handled it correctly. She yielded in a way that allowed Paultin to be right, And yet, I feel like she made some really close points too. When she slammed him with, "Why are you even here? I mean, you don't even know who you care about." And then, there's this whole deal with Paultin going, I can't quit you." He's like, I've thought about leaving you lunatics behind. Well, they are all crazy in one way or another, except for Papa Diath, and now he's a catatonic mess. And gee, there's something for Jared to go with to give Diath a new niche. Have him go nuts. I think that would be fun. I mean, have him be the Craig. Yeah, dice camera action psych. Very good, Swan Dive. Swan Dive says, Diath would be hard to implement because his moves are really similar to another character already in it, but Paultin will probably make an appearance next for sure. Yeah, I agree with you. But, why? Let's have Diath go nuts. Have him develop split personality. Have him change his alignment. I mean, Diath needs to grow. The Lorcatha thing does not seem to be advancing. I don't think that Jared wants him to get angel wings and get celestial blood. I don't think he sees Diath that way, and I think he resists it, so I don't know that it's going anywhere. I think, he just sees Diath as a normal person, as a rogue, who doesn't steal. So I don't know. Who knows? Altogether interesting, but anyway, so Diath is catatonic at this point. It's going to be interesting seeing how the character growth ends up changing their party dynamic. You got Paultin, who's coming to the realization that he can't leave. These people matter to him. That he's got to have a family, or even if he doesn't have to, that they matter. Now, like all traumatized people who struggle to form attachments, Paultin has been hurt now by what Evelyn said when she said, "Why are you even here?" And he goes, "You know what? Maybe that's something I need to put some thought into." Oh, you wounded him, Evie, but good. Knee him in the crotch next. And maybe that's how I'd like to see their ship end. Stand up for yourself, Evelyn. Have some self-respect. Knee him in the crotch, and then find yourself a new love. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on that. Swan Dive says, "I would love to see that. That would be insane." Yeah, let's have a crazy Diath. Do it, Jared. Let's have a psychotic break. Okay, crazy characters are so fun to play. I mean, look at Holly. She has so much fun playing Strix. But let's do something different with Jared. Let's have a split personality disorder, or I don't know, something like that. That would be fun. Anyway. Kind of to move things on, let's go down the rabbit hole. Let's talk about let's talk a little bit more about where I see the series possibly going and what could happen. So first of all, when the Giants came up, I was sure that it was Umber Lee. I thought it was the Forgotten Realms sea goddess. It did not end up being her. But, when they rose out, they've got kelpie hair and blue skin or purple skin, whatever, and they're giant. I was like, oh my gosh, it's Umber Lee. Why is the sea goddess taking... And then too many gods, too many powers, and whatnot. But it was just... So I'm wondering, where are we going with the Giants? I mean, what's going to come of that? I mean, it was meant to go elsewhere. So I don't know. The Flood, okay? I do not know what is going to happen with the Flood. Chris has, once again, the suboptimal dice camera action players have given him such DM fodder to go with. Interesting. I'm going to tell you what I think is going to happen. I think the Harpers are going to come after the Waffle Crew. I don't think the Harpers can ignore this. For those of you who are not familiar with Forgotten Realms as much, the Harpers are kind of the CIA, the FBI, and the Knights of Good, or I don't know. They're a noble organization full of bards and other interesting classes, druids, good wizards, and people who are dedicated to protecting the realms from tyranny. And good. I think the Harpers are going to come after them. They flooded, they knocked buildings over or skew, and people died. People died. In a flood that size, somebody is bound to die. So my suspicion is that the Harpers are going to come for them. Somebody should come for them. I would not be surprised at all if Evelyn's Paladin Order did not come at them. Although we know that there's corruption in Evelyn's Paladin Order. So, and I really want to see that play out. What an interesting opportunity for her. I really want to see that play out this season. I don't know that we're going to get to it, but Chris mentioned it on purpose. So I think that's going to come out. Also, Strahd is free. Mr. Shambleface is out. Strahd is free. Somebody has freed him from that doll. There is too much at stake. We also have Clouth the Dragon, and he is now a power player in this game. And so, he's in the intro to Dice Camera Action. So Klauth will come out. We've got those nobles. I don't know who that swashbuckler is. As I said before, I do not think it's Jarlaxle. And I don't want it to be Jarlaxle. I don't think he fits. So anyway, that could be interesting. Also, Acquisitions Incorporated. Jerry Holkins told Chris right before he logged off that he was going to be emailing him what he wants help with from the Waffle Crew. Now, let me tell you what I would love to see. I would love to see an Acquisitions Incorporated episode where they are in the thick of crap, as the Acquisitions Incorporated party is bound to be in, and where in the thick of crap they suddenly summon the Waffle Crew, and they come in and they get to save the day. Because, if you were in trouble, I don't know about you, but if I was in trouble, I would want to see Evelyn fly in, and Strix fly in on her broom, and, Paultin come in on his mandolin, and Diath come in chucking his daggers. I would want to see them, because at 10th level, they are powerful. They do a lot of damage. And some of their spells are quite potent. Strix has been polymorphing things left and right. She has saved the day a number of times with that spell, and she do a whole lot of damage with that fireball. So, anyway, that being the case, I think that would be so fun to have, things look dark and then have the Waffle Crew come in and save the day. Come in through Strix's hat or something like that. We do have the whole situation with Diath having a new key on board, and then maybe Elminster also being involved at some point. I don't know. I don't love Elminster, to be honest with you. What mandolin? Yeah, Paultin will not be flying in on his mandolin. Good point, Swan Dive. I do not... the whole mandolin just takes me back to the dragon turtle incident, and that whole situation. He throws down the mandolin. Evelyn tries to give away the holy symbol of Ravenkind. All we needed in that mess was Strix offering the dragon turtle snickety snooks. That's the only way it could have been any lamer. But like I said, I do think it worked because I think it's representative of their changing party roles. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have to say about Dice Camera Action right now. I could probably do an entire another episode where we go over that fight again, but that was an epic throwdown between Evelyn and Paultin. Evelyn has grown from it, I think. To see her now, before she hurls herself headlong into danger, consider her family. That's character growth. So way to go, Anna, on that one. I like it. But I think she needs to be done begging for affection from someone who is too selfish or self-involved or abusive to offer it. Or maybe, honestly, maybe it just doesn't feel that way about her. That's fine. There are other fish in the sea. Moving along, right? Put a ring on it or move on. So anyway, that's what I have to say about Dice Camera Action. Trapped in the Birdcage. We want to finish up. I know it's going to be a long few weeks to Waterdeep. Yeah, a long frosty 2 weeks. Swan Dive. Few weeks to Waterdeep, and who knows what else is going to happen on the ship. And I always wonder, and not the ship, but the ship, right? I always wonder what happens in the interim, in between sessions when they talk. Sometimes you can tell that things have been planned amongst the players and Chris, and then you can tell what's spontaneous. I think oftentimes it's easy to see, and sometimes who knows, right? We could be wrong, so I don't know. Anyway, moving on. So if any of you have been watching Trapped in the Birdcage, it is getting interesting. Holly, I think, is comfortable DMing. Obviously, she doesn't have the same strengths that Chris has. She has really created kind of an interesting problem that they have going on in the city. The party is interesting in Trapped in the Birdcage. They're all pretty self-involved, except for Reader, who is the Warforged. So it's kind of an interesting thing. They have this, underground wrestling tournament, which I didn't love. I don't think the wrestling is as funny or as entertaining. And I grew up watching WWF. I know it's WWE now, but I grew up watching the classics: Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, The Ultimate Warrior. So, I don't know. It was interesting. Okay, so Swan Dive's jumping in. Also, Chris Perkins totally wanted them to own their own boat. When they didn't get all the map, they ended up having the captain killed. Whoops. Oh, I know. I wondered why he did that. Why did he off that captain? It's like, what? Like, whoa. So, I mean, he all of a sudden, she's swept over sea, like, sorry, dead captain. You know, she was really interesting. She's talking 100 miles an hour, you know. So, I don't know. That's interesting. So, go figure. Trapped in the birdcage, back to that. So, I'm still in love with Nejma. If we're talking about characters that we would like to see guest star from Trapped in the Birdcage, I don't know how that would happen. Trapped in the Birdcage is a prequel show. It is, they met young Strix, so clearly it's taken place ahead of time, and the only way that Nejma or one of Trapped in the Birdcage characters could do that is through a portal that also includes time travel. Now, it's Sigil. It's the City of Doors, and I'm sure some of those doors lead to other times. So, it is a distinct possibility. I would love to see Nejma. She is hilarious. She continues to be hilarious. So if you're not watching Trapped in the Birdcage, it's worth tuning in. Holly's kind of taking a long time to develop her story. I think she's a new dungeon master and a particularly new streaming dungeon master. And I don't know, and she obviously doesn't have Chris's finesse yet. She needs to work on that, but I know she will, and I'm sure she'll improve. She's a brilliant creative person. So it's really quite interesting. So there's that. I like that. The party dynamic is interesting too. The problem I think I see with Trapped in the Birdcage is that between the party, only one of them has morality, and that is Reader, the Warforged, and it's been programmed into him. And the rest of the three of them are pretty self-involved and also kind of criminal. And Reader is a child. So he can't really be the moral force in the party. So I don't know. Holly's going to have to work on establishing their motivation for all the wandering around in the sewers and the other places that they're doing. They're kind of running into this, cult or organization. They ran into a mind flayer in the sewers. They're kind of just wandering Sigil at the behest of these were-ravens, kind of just trying to discover what the threat is, and rats are a big part of it, which actually is kind of, she's drawing, it's kind of a part of the beginning of Planescape Torment, that game that Holly loves so much, which kind of introduced her to Sigil before she bought the books, I think. So she's kind of drawing on that whole rat thing. I think she needs to move the plot forward. We need a hint as to what's going on, because right now we've got them just, several episodes in, they're just kind of wandering Sigil, experiencing things. They're not really moving the story forward, and that I see as problematic. I haven't listened to the last episode, so maybe it moved a bit forward, but that's something that they're going to have to work on. Their party needs motivation, too. Chris writes about that a lot. He talks about it a lot. He's got a couple of videos online talking about being a DM, where he talks about party motivation. So Trapped in the Birdcage is good. I did also catch the first episode of Dark and Dicey. I will tell you, I have a concern, because I wonder if Paultin's statement about being done, maybe, or having to consider why he is there, I'm still worried that Nate's going to quit Dice Camera Action. He also tossed out the fact that he doesn't have time for 2 D&D streams. If he is going to use this break with Evelyn or argument with Evelyn as a way for Paultin to leave the Waffle Crew and him to quit Dice Camera Action for his own show that he has more creative control over, perhaps, that's what I have to say about that, and screw him. No, anyway. Anyway, so I don't know. I'm afraid Nate's going to quit the show. I don't know if he will. It'll be interesting to see how that moves along. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but like I said, it's 3 episodes and 3 shows that I've been looking at. First episode of Dark and Dicey was interesting. The party is very interesting. I think the party is more interesting than the Trapped in the Birdcage party. You have some villains. You have a halfling that acts like a child, which is interesting. I know it's cliche, but she's playing the player's playing it really well. I think Nate's fiance Christina V is playing an evil Yuan-Ti, and she's pretty funny. She's trying to start a cult dedicated to herself. So, anyway, and she had all these children running around this village they were in yelling, "Yay, death and murder, copulation!" Anyway, so it was funny. I laughed pretty hard. So the party, I think, is more interesting. They're also darker. A lot of them are evil, and I think, I don't know, I think it's going to be interesting. So I'm going to keep tuning into Dark and Dicey. I might devote some more time to it. I'm going to keep watching Trapped in the Birdcage. The characters are interesting, and of course it's Holly and Anna. Yeah, the dynamic in Dark and Dicey is great. The characters are going to play one off one another well. Yeah, I agree with you too, Swan Dive. I think they're going to play off each other very well. And I will say again, I just love how many D&D streams there are going right now. When I discovered Dice Camera Action, I fell in love with it, and it was wonderful. And like I said, I would fall asleep listening to them at night, and I was so excited because there were 70 some episodes, or who knows, however. And when I realized that I had caught up, I was like, Sorry, you get my raptor impression. I was not happy when I caught up. And now here I am doing a show about it. Obviously, I love it so much. So it's interesting. The only thing I lament is that I don't have enough time to watch them all. Because you also have to get your Supernatural in, and you have to get in your Legends of Tomorrow and Supergirl and Arrow, and brother got shows to watch. So anyway, there you go. That's my thoughts on Dice Camera Action. Thank you for tuning in. Swan Dive, always fun to talk to you. Thanks for coming in. And nice to banter back and forth and get some of your ideas. If anybody else has any other ideas listening to my stream, I'm sure some of you are triggered by some of the things that I have gone over today. Feel free to leave a comment either on the YouTube channel, the Sage of Sorcery YouTube channel, or you can leave a comment. Adam E.T. likes to leave his comments underneath the subreddit where I link the video. So anyway, this is me, Sage of Sorcery. You can follow me on Twitter. I am at Sage of Sorcery 1 on Twitter. I'm Matthew at Sage of Sorcery 1 on Twitter. Feel free to follow me on Twitter. I don't post a ton, but it's all Dice Camera Action related. And then Sage of Sorcery YouTube channels where you can find my video. So anyway, thank you very much for listening. Yeah, I'm sure it's going to frost Adam's cookies, Swan Dive. But I love to hear what he has to say. So anybody who has anything to say, always love to talk to you. Thanks so much for watching, and have a good night.